that's what it would look like above the hill.
Okay.
Like when you look at something from far away, it just fades into blue the further it gets. And he kind of pays attention to that, except it's going over a hill. And I just like that he doesn't only do like the city area and
Mm-hmm.
just leave it like that. He does the crops, he does the city, the barns, the buildings, and he does the forest, the shadows, and the background hills. And I think it's awesome.
Yeah, that's perfect. So he has really thought about the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. Every part of this painting is full, right? So our foreground up here, we can see the details of the crops. Our middle ground, we see the city, kind of this little village in a way with lots of details of what's going on in this village. And then the background isn't just plain hills. He's including some interest with the different forests back here, this roadway that goes off into space, even some more distant buildings off in the very far background, and lots of contrast in colors. Okay, good. Okay. All right. So space is the area around, inside, or between shapes or forms. This should look familiar to you guys. So positive and negative space. Positive space is the space occupied by an object. So that would be kind of the black area right here. Negative space is the empty space around an object. So I will be saying positive and negative a lot, especially when we get to still life. I'm going to be saying, okay, let's look at the negative space. And negative space is the space around an object. So here's a good example. So artists often use the negative space in compositions to create visual interest. In this image, the stacks of paper represent the positive space, while the black background is the negative space. What do we see in the black space? What's forming out of that negative space? Look closely. Raise your hand. Raise your hand when you see it. Yes.
I mean, it's looking like a face.
Okay. Zachary?
It looks like a face or a head.
Okay, we're seeing it looks kind of like a face or a head. Giancarlo?
I agree with the fact that it looks like a face and head in the empty space and in the front of the paper that's pushed in and out.
Okay, so is everyone seeing this? If we look at this right here, we see the profile of a face coming out. So this negative space, like there's nothing there but black wall, right? But the paper, so this is think of stacks of copy paper, all kind of arranged to where we're creating this cutout in a way out of our negative space. So the white is the positive, the black is the negative. The negative is like the cutout, the empty space. Does that make sense? Nod if you agree. Yes. Ryan?
It looks like a bite out of an apple at first.
A bite out of an apple? Yeah, it does. Okay, let's see. Olivia says it looks like a face. Yes, go ahead.
To me, kind of looks like it definitely looks like a face, but I can't tell if it's like art or it's computer art.
Oh, it's a real art. Like it's not computer. Yeah, that's a good question. Good question. Okay. So there's several ways of creating illusion of space and depth. So one is overlapping, scale, placement, detail, color and value, and linear perspective. We are going to go into detail next week with linear perspective. That's our next project, is a 1-point perspective. So that's going to be a really cool project for you guys. Okay, so overlapping is when one object partially covers another object to create the illusion of depth. So if I was in kindergarten and I drew a person, and one person is right here, and then next to it, I've drawn a tree. Is that overlapping? No. So, but if I'm in middle school, I would draw a person, and I could put a tree behind my person. Is that overlapping? Yes. So once you're in 6th grade, you are expected to have overlapping in your drawings. You wouldn't just put a tree and a person all on the same plane, like all in the foreground. You would overlap each one, right? Yes.
So what does it look like in the background?
Right. So you would want to have a foreground, middle ground, and background. All right. So what about scale? This one I see a lot with scale. So scale refers to the size of object in relation to another object. So if you drew a person and your person was the same size as a skyscraper in the background, would that scale be correct? No. Why is that not right, Marley?
Just looking at starting as close to the size of the skyscraper.
Right, because the skyscraper would be huge, right? So our even if it's in the background, our skyscraper will still be larger than the human that's in front. So scale is referring to, does it make sense? Does the size of the object, is it accurate? Does it make sense? And we'll do that with our perspective next week. You'll get to practice scale. It's a really cool project of a way to make things look accurate. So placement is where things are arranged on the page. So like this, life, yes. What's it called? A lifesaver. Yeah. So this lifesaver that's closest to us is in the foreground. And then we have the ones that are smaller. They're getting smaller as they're going further off in the distance. Okay. Detail. So the objects that are closest to us will be very detailed and they get kind of blurry and fuzzier as they get further away. You'll get to practice that too. Color and value, things that are closer to us will look darker and warmer. And then as they move away further off in the distance, they get lighter and cooler in color. And we're going to look at that closer next week. And then linear perspective, we'll cover this next week. Okay, this is that 1 point perspective. This will be your project that you get to work on. Okay, that's all I have for today. And so next week, or not next week, sorry, the rest of today, you are going to work on your sketchbook assignments. I've moved the due date. Your sketchbook assignments are now due tomorrow, end of day. Did everyone hear that? When are they due? Tomorrow. End of day. Okay. I know there's been a little bit confusion about how we're turning things in. So I know some classes, like you're here in person, you'll be turning stuff in person. I just talked to Mr. Wazaleski. My class is the exception to the rule. The reason being, I cannot touch 300 papers. I cannot touch 300 sketchbooks. That's very dangerous and that's not safe. So what I'll do tomorrow is I'm going to bring in like a tablet and then a couple student Chromebooks, and we will photograph our work in class and save it to like a class folder. Okay, so we'll like have our name, you'll photograph it here in class, and we'll turn it in that way. For those of you at home, you're going to turn it in through the Google Classroom just like you have been doing. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. So I know your other classes will have you turning stuff in person, but for my class, we're still going to utilize photographing things to turn it in. Yes. Okay, that's fine. If you've already turned it in, that's fine. Yes, Karen.
So tomorrow I can bring my own Chromebook because I
No, we'll just no, because I don't want you carrying it around all day. We'll have some set up here. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Home crew, are you guys doing okay? Do you have any questions on what you're doing? You're working on your sketchbooks due tomorrow. Okay. Those of you get to work. Go. Start working.